Hi guys, this is Lachelle from Scarlet Moon Creations, and I am back, and this is my November reading wrap-up where I talk about the second half of the books I read in the month of November. It was an okay reading month. I didn't read everything I had wanted to, but it's fine. And I did wind up taking part in Tome Topple half-assedly. Again, not as much as I wanted to, but it was a good reading month. Let's just say that. And of course, since this is the second wrap-up of the month, you can go check out my mid-November wrap-up, which came out already. Since this is the second wrap-up of the month, I will be talking about my reading stats. So let's go into that right away. In the month of November, I read a total of 9 books. So, like, a nice, decent number, right? I should be happy. Pages read 2,543. So, not bad. Hours listened 29.5. So, if I'm being honest, this would definitely be over 3,000 pages read this month. So, not bad. Not bad. I'm, like, for whatever reasons, trying to make myself feel better. My average rating was 3.83, and I only acquired one book. This was an ebook from Tor.com, and it was, what was it? A short story by Peach Jelly Clark, who I've read from before and I would love to read more of. I plan to, and this was the perfect opportunity. Thanks Tor.com for those free downloads. Library books, I took out 4 library books this month, and I read no Owen Voices books. Now on to the genres. I read 6 fantasy books and 3 mystery books. Next up is the formats. I read no audiobooks. It was 6 ebooks and 3 physical books. Audience type, 8 adult books and 1 young adult book. And as far as identity goes, I read, as far as gender, there's no, everyone was basically, all the books I read were cisgender if it was discussed at all. So, nothing much to say there. I read one book where there were characters of different races, so I put that under mixed. And sexuality, I read one book with a gay main character. Authors, there were no new to me authors. All were authors I've read books from before. And why, you might say? Because types, I read no standalone books. And every book I read, all 9 of them, were part of series. So only one of those was the first book in a series, and from an author that's been around for a long time, Nora Roberts. So I've definitely read books from her over the years. The one book was a reread. And lastly, let's talk about my ratings. That averaged 3.83. I read 1 5-star book, 4 4-star books, 3 3.5-star books, and 1 3-star book. So again, like I said, not a bad month for reading. So let's get into the books the rest of the books I read this month. So continuing on, I read the last 2 stories in the memoirs of Sherlock Holmes, which are is one book of short stories about Sherlock Holmes in my complete collection of Sherlock Holmes stories book. This is the ebook that I read. All of the stories are by Arthur Conan Doyle, and this person is just going up and down the street on their four-wheeler for some odd reason right now. Windows closed, bear with me, please. Now, these are all adult mysteries starring Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. The last two were better than the rest of them in this section. I read The Naval Treaty, which was bigger in scale, the mystery, I should say, that Sherlock was asked to help solve. It was on a grander scale, meaning that it affected things in the government of, and the Navy, I guess, of the English country. And also, it had to do with a treaty, so French and I think the Russians, and I forget, maybe Italy, I think was the fourth country involved in this. So, yeah, it was very interesting. And we don't get to see Sherlock going through the steps of solving it, but he does explain afterwards. The solving of the crime happens off screen, which is definitely the trend of these memoirs. But yeah, so I like this one. I gave it 3.5 stars. The last story, I don't know what's happening with this dog. The last story in the memoirs of Sherlock is the penultimate, the one we've all been waiting for, or I've been waiting for, the final problem. This is a story that most people know, even those who haven't really read Sherlock before. The final problem is the death of Sherlock Holmes, basically. It's his clash with Moriarty, and it's disappointing that it's in this here, in this section. We don't really hear about Moriarty in any of the previous stories, in any of the previous books. But Sherlock, begins to tell Watson about Moriarty and how he's this uber criminal who controls all the other criminals, that people who want crimes committed go to him through his people, and he's been building up this, I don't want to call it a syndicate, but this web of crime in England and beyond. And then Sherlock disappears, assumedly having been confronted by Moriarty, and they go over the Reichenbach Falls, basically, is what the only option is. So, yes. I liked this, even though there wasn't as much detail as I would have liked. I'm very appreciative for the TV show Sherlock, the BBC one with Martin Freeman and Benedict Cumberbatch, where they dealt with this in more detail, because that felt more satisfying. I think if I hadn't already seen that, I would have been like, "The hell is this?" So that concludes the memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. I can move on to the next Sherlock Holmes book, which does take place after this. So it'll be interesting to see how Sherlock is brought back to life by Arthur Conan Doyle. Okay, so the next book that I finished was Edge Dancer by Brandon Sanderson. This is a short story in the Stormlight Archive series. So this is like 2.5 in the series. I read this in the Arcanum Unbounded book that I've had most of the year, where all of the short stories up until this point are included. I returned it, so here's the Edge Dancer cover. However, so I read the physical book that I got out from the library. This is an adult high fantasy series, and like I said, it's a short story, a novella. I don't know. It's like 200 something pages. So the Stormlight Archive series is we're set on a planet Roshar on the continent by the same name, and we're following multiple characters while they try to figure out what is happening, what is coming. Some of them are gaining some powers, others are making moves politically, and yeah, that was a horrible summary. But I did talk about the series in more detail in my mid-November wrap-up video. So there are these groups of people, the Knights Radiant, that disappeared or gave up. They used to protect the people on Roshar, and they laid down their swords hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and no one has seen any of their kind since. And it seems like they are coming back now. There are, I think it was 10 different types of Knights Radiance. They all have different powers. And it's very interesting. In Edge Dancer, we follow Lift, who is a young girl who lives on the street. Basically, she had a interlude in book 2 of the Stormlight Archives, Words of Radiance, and now we follow almost very closely after what happened in that interlude. Lift is very interesting. She's very streetwise or whatever, and she's got her Spren, Wendell, who is not. Wendell would very much like to be non-violent, following the rules, following the path, following laws, and also just comfortably gardening, whether it's chairs or plants or whatever. But he is stuck with Lift, who has the power to make herself like slippery and therefore fast. It's very interesting. We follow Lift running away from a safe and comfortable environment because she's uncomfortable with being safe and comfortable because she's a street kid, and she goes off to another town and winds up confronting a lot of things. I found it really fun and interesting. I like Lift. She's very irreverent. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing, and she always throws everybody around her off, even other street kids. They don't quite know what to think of Lift, but I liked her. We got some reveals for the overarching story, the Stormlight Archive, which I found very interesting, and I'm eager to continue on to the next book, 3, Oathbringer, but the library says I won't get it for another month, so I might not read that until next year. Pray for me. The next, I gave that 4 stars as well. So things have been going pretty well the end of the year here. The last book that I completed in the month of November is The Lady of the Lake. This is, I think, Witcher. It's part of the Witcher series. Definitely know that, but I believe it's the book number 6. So there are 2 short story compilations which are not officially book 1 and 2. So I think this counts. I don't know, but it's technically the last book in the series. There's one other that's kind of a prequel, which I didn't realize at the time, otherwise I would have read it earlier, but a prequel to the series in general. So I will probably read that next month. But Lady of the Lake, this is the culmination of the whole Geralt, Yennefer, Ciri in particular, storyline that we got a short story from in the beginning, and then every novel since has been about this. This one was not what I was expecting. Not at all. So the Witcher series, now that I've basically read it all, the Witcher is Geralt. Geralt is the Witcher. He is this being who is created with magic and science to be reborn essentially from a human being into a witcher, which goes out and kills monsters for a living. In this world, it's kind of medievalish, and there are all kinds of monsters. There are all kinds of magical creatures as well around. So people hire witchers to kill them, but witchers are kind of seen as monsters themselves. Yennefer is a sorceress, and Yennefer and Geralt have like a relationship that is very weird. And then there's Ciri, the child of prophecy, who we watch grow up through this series. And if you've been watching my recent reads, my wrap-ups, you know that I've not been happy in this, because the storyline, particularly for Ciri, has been very harsh, very depressing to see her go through. It's less so in this one. Like, things are bad. There is the big war between the nations is occurring, and Ciri and Yennefer and Geralt are all trying to find each other and not always doing a good job until the very end, which may be a spoiler, I guess, but they do find each other. Is this a happy ever after? No. This is pretty realistic, to be perfectly honest. And yeah, what I found strange was even from the beginning. So the previous book was The Tower of Swallows, and Ciri gets there, goes, and then she leaves the world that we're used to. This one starts off with her coming into, we see how she comes out the other side, and it's like Arthurian times, basically, and that I was not expecting. So there's also timeline jumps in, like, time is not linear in how this is written, so we switch around a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit, so I wasn't sure exactly where Ciri was at what time in some parts, but I think I pulled it together at the end. I definitely cried at the end of this, with the meeting up, the war, people dying that I actually care about, that we spent time with. They were going to be parted, and then they were going to die, and then they lived, and then all this other stuff happened, and I just, oh my god, I was going kind of nuts with my emotions. Like, Sapkowski really threw us a lot at the end there, and I didn't dislike this book, for the most part, so I gave it 4 stars. This is an adult epic high fantasy series, and I read the audiobook from the library, and this is the second book I completed for Tome, Topple. The first being Words of Radiance, which I talked about in the previous reading wrap-up. So those are all of the books that I read in the month of November. Let me know if you've read any of these books. Please ignore the background noise if you hear it. Sorry. Let me know if you've read any of these books down in the comments below. What did you think of them? I somewhat finished 2 series, basically. The Memoirs of Sherlock and The Witcher. So I don't know if I would do like a whole video about them. I don't know. One thing about doing these wrap ups that doesn't satisfy me is keeping them spoiler free, and especially since I read so many series, so I want to talk about the things that happened. Uh, so I might do series wrap ups next year. We'll see. I don't know. That's a lot video wise, but let me know if you like this video by giving me a thumbs up. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you are new to me. Hit that bell notification so you will be notified when new videos come out. I do other videos, but it is the end of the year. I have 2 more wrap-ups coming for the month of December, mid-December, and full December with my December reading stats. I will also have coming soon all of my end of the year videos, my favorites, my least favorites, surprising, disappointing books of the year, and the full yearly reading stats, and maybe one other video. So definitely subscribe if that sounds like something interesting to you. I hope you guys have a safe and healthy holiday season, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.